Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into something really, I think, quite remarkable. It's a structured 13-step path to financial independence, and it's designed to be practical, calm, and really specifically for you, the salaried person, maybe a new investor, who's just looking for a clear path forward.
Yeah. And our mission today is to really unpack the foundational steps of this journey. What's so surprising is that the path doesn't begin with, tax codes or credit scores.
Not at all.
We are focusing on just the first two steps, and they are completely non-financial.
Okay, let's get into this. Our roadmap, it comes from Tamir Chacham, the Golden Path to Financial Freedom channel. And his background is, I think, key to why this all resonates so much.
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't a silver spoon kind of thing.
No.
Far from it. The sources make it really clear. Chacham he was deep in the employee mindset. He worked in high tech until he was 45.
Wow, 45.
Yeah, and he had no formal financial education. He lived by that equation we all know.
Time equals money.
Time equals money, the one that governs almost everyone starting out.
Which, that makes his experience just fundamentally relatable. He started where, 99% of people listening are probably at right now.
Exactly. And the big turning point, it wasn't a lottery win or some inheritance. The catalyst was purely intellectual. It was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
The classic.
A classic for a reason. And that book, it didn't just fill his bank account overnight. What it did was trigger this profound mental change. A shift in how he saw the world that happened before any of the assets showed up.
So the architecture of freedom, it starts with a cognitive leap. It's an internal revolution first.
It is the absolute prerequisite. And this whole 13-step strategy is built on 3 stages. Stage 1, that's our focus today, is building foundational mindsets.
Yeah.
Stage 2 gets into building financial resilience, so the practical tools. And then stage 3 is economic growth, the scaling phase.
And the material is so insistent that you can't skip stage 1. If that psychological foundation isn't solid, anything you build, any portfolio, any side business, it's structurally unsound.
It'll crumble. The first serious market dip or a personal crisis and the whole thing falls apart. The foundation is non-negotiable.
All right, let's jump right into that foundation then. Step 1, the mindset shift. This whole approach, it forces a distinction that I think we rarely make. If you ask most people what financial independence is, they'd say it's being rich, the private island fantasy.
Right.
What's the critical difference this framework is asking us to see?
The difference is, it's radical and it's sharp. Being rich usually means having a lot of money and, the ability to consume at a very high level.
The yachts and the fast cars.
Exactly. But financial independence, or FAI, it's a precise technical condition. It's about security. It's about time. It's not necessarily about luxury. And the source insists the very first step has to be an identity shift, moving from the employee mindset to the asset owner mindset.
Let's break that employee mindset down, because it's a trap we all know so well.
It is, and it's defined by one thing: absolute dependency. The core belief is that your income only comes from selling your time.
Your salary, your hourly rate.
Right. The second you stop selling your time, you get sick, you take a vacation, you get laid off, the income just stops. The source sums it up perfectly. If you don't work, there is no money, period.
And that is where the rat race equation becomes so draining. We've all been there. You get a promotion, a nice raise, you feel like you finally made it. And then you look at the expenses. The daycare, the mortgage, just the cost of living. And you realize you're running faster just to tread water.
It's actually worse than treading water because the equation is dynamically negative. Think about it. When you're younger, you have tons of energy, right? But your expenses might be lower.
Sure.
As you get older, your responsibilities, your fixed costs, family, health, all of it, they go up. But ironically, your peak capacity to trade that time for money might actually be starting to decline.
So you're squeezed from both ends. You need more money, but you might have less fuel in the tank to go get it.
That is the rat race in a nutshell. And the only solution inside that mindset is to just keep chasing a higher paying job. But that fundamental dependency on your time, it never changes.
So here's the challenge I imagine for a lot of our listeners. You're exhausted after a 9-to-5. To hear someone say, just adopt the asset owner mindset, it can feel, a little abstract.
Very abstract.
How do you do that when you're working with 0 assets and a pile of bills? Does it risk sounding like, empty self-help talk.
That is the exact challenge this framework is designed to solve. It gets the psychological difficulty. The source argues that you don't have to wait until you have $1 million to think like an owner.
Okay.
In fact, thinking like an owner is the very mechanism that gets you the $1 million. It's about changing the operating system in your brain first.
So what does thinking like an owner actually look like? On a Tuesday night, after work, before you've even bought your first stock?
Let's use that restaurant analogy. Contrast the cook and the owner. The cook is focused on execution. Chopping vegetables, plating the food, clocking in, clocking out.
Doing the task.
Right. The owner's mind is focused on systems. They're asking different questions. What's the ROI on this new fryer? Can we switch suppliers to improve margins by 3%? How can we automate the reservation system?
So an employee asks, how do I do this task better? But an owner asks, how can I build a system that does this task without me? And how can I measure if it's profitable?
Precisely. So if you're an employee, thinking like an owner means when you invest your personal time, you're not just, watching Netflix. You're assessing potential systems. You're researching market gaps. You're figuring out where your capital, no matter how tiny, can be put to work without your direct time.
That reframes your free time completely. Instead of it being downtime, it becomes capital that you can invest in system design.
That is the core of it, the identity shift. The source puts it this way. It's not the money that determines if you'll be free, but how you think about it. Your goal has to shift. It's not just, I need to save $500 this month.
It's bigger than that.
It is. The goal becomes, I must become an asset owner. That identity dictates the questions you ask, the actions you take, even if all you have is $500 in a savings account. It moves you from being passive to being active, a creator.
It reminds me of that idea that your identity drives your habits. If you see yourself as a runner, you go for runs. If you truly start to see yourself as an asset owner, you'll start allocating your time and energy to acquiring assets, even if that just means reading a complicated investment prospectus instead of watching another show.
The order is counterintuitive, but it seems critical. Identity has to come before the resources. Once you make that mental switch, you've laid the bedrock for everything else.
Okay, fantastic. So I've done the mental work. I now see the world as an asset owner, looking for systems to build or buy. But if the goal isn't just to get rich, I still need a destination. Where am I pointing this thing?
And that leads us straight to the second and equally foundational piece. Step 2, clarifying the target, or, defining your personal vision.
Right.
We go back to that technical definition of FI. The sources define it as something simple, measurable, and importantly, achievable. It is the state where your passive income from assets covers your total expenses.
Just covers the bills, period. Nothing more, nothing less.
Exactly. Let's use a real number. If your family's monthly expenses are, say, $5,000, then financial independence is achieved the moment your passive income reliably hits $5,001.
Done.
You are technically financially free.
That is so motivating because it makes the target finite. Rich is always a moving target, right? There's always someone with bigger yacht. But covering $5,000 in expenses, that's a binary switch. You either have it or you don't.
And that measurability is the secret weapon. The framework suggests you chase true wealth, if you want it, after you've secured FI. The sequence is critical. First, get to that place of security. Then, from a position of zero stress and total choice, you can decide if you want to aim higher.
This all hinges on a really powerful statement from the source material. Financial independence is a planned lifestyle, not a sum in the bank. That flips the whole thing on its head.
It's a complete reversal. It means the first question in step 2 is not, how much money do I need?
So what is it?
It's, how do I want my life to look when time is no longer a factor?
And this is presented as a pretty profound exercise. You have to literally sit down and write out in detail your desired life. 5, 10 years from now, what does an ideal Tuesday look like? Who are you with? Where do you live? How many hours, if any, do you choose to work?
It sounds so simple, but this is often the hardest part of the entire 13-step process. And, I have to ask, why is that? Why is describing a perfect day so much harder than just setting a savings goal of, say, $2 million?
That's a great question. I think because setting a big abstract number like 2 million lets you hide a little. It keeps the goal distant. It avoids real accountability.
Whereas this visioning exercise, it forces a kind of radical honesty. You have to strip away all the societal noise, what your parents want, what your friends are doing. You have to confront what you really value.
Right, not what the world tells you to value. And maybe your ideal day actually involves reading in a library and volunteering. Maybe it doesn't involve a sports car at all.
And realizing that your truly free life might only cost $4,000 a month, not $10,000, well, that's a game changer. The vision can dramatically shrink the financial mountain you need to climb.
So once that detailed, clear, emotionally charged picture is established, then you can translate it into a number. You figure out how much that lifestyle costs, and that number becomes your real FI goal.
The vision becomes your compass. It's your why.
Yeah.
And that emotional connection is what gets you through the tough parts, through the long, boring middle of saving and investing.
Exactly. When that vision is crystal clear, saving money stops feeling like a punishment.
Right. It's not a restriction.
No, it's a direct investment in that lifestyle you just designed. When you skip an expensive dinner out, you're not being cheap. You're actively buying future time. You're buying that perfect Tuesday you described.
That is a total shift in energy. You're not depriving yourself. You're intentionally allocating your resources toward a life you actually want.
It gives meaning to delayed gratification.
It does.
So bringing these two foundations together, the deep identity change of becoming an asset owner and the honest, specific work of creating a measurable personal vision that completes all of stage one.
And these are the unshakable foundations. There's psychological first, then conceptual. They make sure that when you get to the practical stuff, your actions are aligned with your true goals, not just some generic idea of success.
And only after these mental foundations are poured and set do we even think about moving to stage two, building financial resilience.
That's where the nuts and bolts come in.
Yeah.
Controlling cash flow, managing debt, systematic savings. But the key is that your budget is no longer just about survival. It's a strategic tool designed specifically to feed the vision you built in step 2.
Everything serves the vision.
Exactly, which then, of course, leads to stage 3, economic growth.
Right.
And that's the phase where you actively scale your systems, you generate that non-time dependent income, and you propel yourself right past that FI finish line.
What comes through so clearly from all of this is just how radical it is. The first mile of the FI marathon is entirely internal. It starts in your mind, not in the stock market. The identity shift and the vision, that's the real starting line.
And that, I think, it raises a profound closing thought for you to take with you. If the starting line isn't financial, then maybe the biggest challenge in this whole journey isn't finding the perfect stock or, executing some complex strategy.
No. What do you think the true obstacle is?
Maybe the true challenge is just having the internal capacity to stop everything, to resist the inertia of the daily grind, and be radically honest with ourselves, to define clearly, without any outside noise, what kind of life we truly want to live.
Because without that genuine answer.
Yeah, any amount of money you make, even if you become a multimillionaire, it risks leaving you feeling profoundly empty. The path to wealth, strangely enough, might start with a difficult, internal, philosophical journey. And we'll dive into the next practical steps of building that resilience next time.